You think you know Snow White, a harmless fairy tale, an innocent princess with skin as white as snow, 7 cheerful dwarfs, and a jealous queen obsessed with a magic mirror. But the story known in Germany as Schneewittchen did not begin as a bedtime tale. Long before it was softened for children, before songs and happily ever afters, this story carried whispers of real places, real people, and a very real death. In 16th century Germany, records speak of a young noblewoman named Margaretha von Waldeck, a woman famed for her beauty, trapped in a world of court politics, forbidden romance, and dangerous power struggles. She lived among mining towns where children worked underground. She was surrounded by influence, envy, and control. And at just 21 years old, she died suddenly, under circumstances many believed were no accident. No glass coffin, no prince's kiss, only rumors of poison, political enemies, and a life silenced before its time. So ask yourself this: what if Snow White was never meant to be a fantasy? What if the apple was more than symbolism? And what if this fairy tale didn't come from magic, but from mines, monarchs, and murder? Stay with me. And before we descend deeper into this forgotten history, welcome to the Lohr Labyrinth channel. If you're drawn to dark origins, hidden truths, and the real stories buried beneath legend, subscribe, like, and share this video. Because the deeper we go, the more unsettling the truth becomes. The version of Snow White most people recognize today feels gentle, almost harmless, but that version is not where the story began. In early 19th century Germany, brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm recorded a folk tale already centuries old, passed quietly from village to village. In their 1812 collection, Children's and Household Tales, Snow White enters the world not through magic, but through blood and cold. Her mother, a queen, pricks her finger while sewing beside a window framed in black iron. As drops of blood fall onto the snow below, she wishes for a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the window frame. Soon after, the queen dies. Snow White is left in the care of a new wife, her stepmother. And this is where the fairy tale turns into something far darker. The queen is not simply vain, she is obsessive. In the Grimm's earliest version, the mirror does not flatter her, it judges her. When it declares Snow White more beautiful, the queen does not hesitate. She orders a huntsman to take the child into the forest and kill her, demanding proof of death. The huntsman fails. Snow White flees deep into the German forests, a place that, in medieval Europe, symbolized lawlessness, danger, and disappearance. There she finds shelter with 7 dwarfs, figures who work the earth itself, mining deep below the surface. They warn her. They lock the doors. They know what hunts her. But the queen does not stop. In the original tale, the apple is only the final attempt. Before it, the queen disguises herself and strangles Snow White with a laced bodice, pulling it so tight that the girl collapses, lifeless. The dwarfs revive her. Then comes the poisoned comb slipped into her hair. Again, Snow White falls. Again, she is barely saved. Only on the 3rd attempt does death seem permanent. The apple, red, beautiful, and lethal. Snow White collapses, unmoving. No magic, no awakening. She is placed inside a glass coffin, displayed like a relic of lost innocence. In some versions, she does not awaken from love, but from violence when the coffin is disturbed and the poison dislodges from her throat. And the queen? There is no quiet defeat. At Snow White's wedding, she is forced into red-hot iron shoes and made to dance until she collapses and dies. This was not a children's story, it was a warning about envy, power, and how beauty could become a death sentence. And over time, much of this brutality was erased, softened, sanitized, smooth for younger ears. But here's the unsettling question no one asks. Why were these details there in the first place? Because fairy tales don't invent fear, they inherit it. And the version you know today is only the surface. Because beneath the polished story lies something older, something rooted in real jealousy, real danger, and real deaths. And once you see what was removed, you start to wonder what else was deliberately hidden. In the year 1533, in the quiet German region of Waldeck, a noble child was born into privilege and danger. Her name was Margaretha von Waldeck. Contemporary accounts describe her as strikingly beautiful, pale-skinned, and gentle in manner. But beauty in the courts of 16th century Germany was not protection. It was currency, and sometimes a liability. Margaretha's mother died when she was young. Her father, Philip IV, Count of Waldeck-Wildungen, remarried soon after. Margaretha's new stepmother, Katharina von Hatzfeld, gained control of the household and of Margaretha's future. Unlike fairy tales, power here wasn't symbolic. It was legal, financial, and absolute. Margaretha grew up in a world of rigid hierarchy where marriages were negotiated like treaties and daughters were assets to be managed. Her movements were watched, her choices were limited, and her value was measured not by who she was, but by who she could be married to. As a teenager, Margaretha was sent away from Waldeck to the court of Brussels, then under Habsburg rule, one of the most politically charged centers in Europe. Brussels was magnificent, but dangerous. Alliances shifted quietly. Rivalries unfolded in whispers. It was here that Margaretha met Prince Philip of Spain, the son of Emperor Charles III, a man who would one day become King Philip II of Spain, one of the most powerful rulers in European history. Their relationship, according to surviving letters and diplomatic records, was real, and it was serious, but it was also forbidden. Margaretha was not considered politically suitable. She was noble, but not powerful enough. A marriage between them would disrupt carefully planned alliances. It would weaken negotiations. It would threaten control. And so pressure began to close in. Margaretha's stepmother opposed the match. The Spanish court opposed it. Powerful figures with far more to lose than Margaretha herself had already decided the outcome. In 1554, while still in Brussels, Margaretha fell suddenly ill. No official cause of death was recorded. She was 21 years old. Some reports describe her illness as rapid and unexplained. Others quietly suggest poisoning, an accusation that, at the time, could never be proven. No investigation followed. No one was held responsible. Her body was returned to Germany, and the court moved on as if nothing had happened. A young woman, beautiful, controlled by others, removed when she became inconvenient. And here's where the fairy tale begins to feel less like fantasy. Margaretha grew up near copper mines in Waldeck, where children labored underground. Many were malnourished, many were physically stunted. These miners lived together, worked together, and survived in isolation from the outside world. Small figures, underground dwellers, 7, or perhaps simply many. And the poison? In the 16th century, poisoning was one of the most common and discreet methods of eliminating political obstacles, especially women whose deaths needed to appear natural. Margaretha's story was never written as a fairy tale, but it was remembered, passed along, altered, disguised, and generations later, it may have resurfaced as something safer to tell aloud. Because if Snow White was inspired by Margaretha von Waldeck, then the story wasn't about magic at all. It was about a girl who became dangerous simply by being desired. And just like in the tale, when she could no longer be controlled, she disappeared. But this is only one possible Snow White, and the next one lived even closer to a mirror that still exists today. To understand how Margaretha von Waldeck's life may have transformed into legend, we have to leave the royal courts behind and descend underground. Back in Waldeck, the lands controlled by Margaretha's father were rich in copper deposits. These mines were not hidden secrets. They were documented economic lifelines of the region in the 16th century, and they were worked relentlessly. Children were sent into these mines because adults could not fit into the narrow tunnels. They worked long hours in darkness, breathing toxic dust, carrying heavy loads, and rarely seeing daylight. Over time, many of these children grew physically stunted, their growth slowed by malnutrition, exhaustion, and poisonous fumes. They lived together, worked together, ate together, slept together, small figures, underground dwellers, isolated from society. In folklore, these children did not remain minors. They became something else. When stories passed from mouth to mouth, generation to generation, reality softened into symbolism. The dangerous mines became a cottage in the woods. Grueling labor became cheerful work. And the children, shortened by suffering, became dwarfs, not mythical beings, human ones. And Snow White's safety among them may have reflected something very real. The only place a noble girl could disappear was among those society already ignored. But the mines were dangerous in more ways than one. Copper mining exposed workers to heavy metals, including arsenic, one of the most commonly used poisons in early modern Europe. Arsenic was infamous because it was odorless, tasteless, and devastatingly effective. It could be administered slowly, quietly, invisibly. In noble households, poisoning was an unspoken art. If Margaretha had been poisoned, it would not have required magic, only access. And access was plentiful: food, drink, medicine, even fruit. The apple, long before it became a fairy tale symbol, was common in European courts. Easy to carry, easy to offer, easy to tamper with, a beautiful thing hiding something lethal. And suddenly the pieces begin to align. A young woman removed when she became politically inconvenient. A sudden illness with no official explanation. A region defined by mining and child labor. A story that remembers small figures underground. And poison delivered in disguise. But here's the most unsettling part. The Grimm Brothers did not invent these details. They collected them, which means the story already existed, long before ink touched paper. Someone remembered Margaretha's world. Someone whispered it as a warning. But Margaretha von Waldeck may not have been the only Snow White history tried to forget. Because decades later, in another German town, there stood a mirror, and that mirror still speaks. Nearly 200 years after Margaretha von Waldeck's death, another young woman lived a life that felt hauntingly familiar. Her name was Maria Sophia von Erthal, born in 1725 in the small Bavarian town of Lohr am Main, in what is now southern Germany. Lohr was quiet, isolated, surrounded by thick forests and overlooked by hills rich in mineral deposits. But behind the walls of Lohr Castle, Maria Sophia's life was anything but peaceful. Her mother died when she was young. Her father, Philipp Christoph von Erthal, soon remarried. And once again, history introduces a stepmother. Contemporary descriptions portray Maria Sophia as kind, deeply religious, and beloved by the townspeople. Her stepmother, Claudia Elisabeth Maria von Wenningen, however, was known for her cold temperament and obsession with status. She favored her own children and ruled the household with strict authority. But the most chilling artifact tied to this story still exists. Inside Lohr Castle, now preserved in a museum, stands an ornate mirror crafted in the 18th century. At the time, it was considered a technological marvel. Its reflective surface was slightly distorted, and hidden acoustics within the wooden frame could project sound from another room. To visitors, it appeared to answer questions. A mirror that spoke the truth. A mirror that could tell you who was the fairest of them all. And suddenly, the fairy tale detail no longer feels imaginary. Maria Sophia did not flee into myth, but her life unfolded in quiet tragedy. After her father's death in 1749, she was pushed further into isolation. She never married. She never held power. Instead, she retreated into a life of charity and devotion, eventually joining a convent. No poisoned apple, no dramatic execution, just a slow erasure. A woman overshadowed, silenced, and removed from inheritance and influence, while others took her place. And once again, the landscape itself echoes the story. The region around Lohr mine was surrounded by mining operations. Like Waldeck, these mines relied on child labor. The children were small. The work was brutal. The environment toxic. They lived on the edges of society, invisible. And over time, folklore turned them into something else entirely. Dwarfs, not creatures of fantasy, but symbols of a forgotten workforce buried beneath the earth. When the Grimm Brothers traveled through Bavaria in the early 1800s, they collected stories shaped by generations of memory. Stories about cruel stepmothers, about beautiful girls displaced by power, about mirrors, forests, miners, and death disguised as fate, and they stitched those fragments together. But now the question becomes unavoidable. Was Snow White Margaretha von Waldeck poisoned when she became politically dangerous? Or was she Maria Sophia von Erthal, erased slowly by control and obsession, her reflection forever judged by a mirror that still stands? Or is Snow White something even darker? A composite of real women whose lives were rewritten into warning tales. Because the deeper you look, the harder it becomes to separate history from legend. And the mirror has not finished speaking yet. By the early 1800s, Germany was a patchwork of small states, forests, and villages, each with its own stories, superstitions, and warnings whispered from one generation to the next. It was in this world that Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm, two brothers from Hanau, began their monumental work. They were not merely storytellers. They were scholars, linguists, and collectors of history disguised as folklore. Their goal was to preserve the oral traditions of the German people before they disappeared under the pressures of modernization, urbanization, and foreign influence. The Grimms traveled from village to village, listening to peasants, nuns, teachers, and local storytellers. They documented tales in painstaking detail, preserving not only the words but the emotions, warnings, and horrors embedded within them. The story of Snow White, known locally as Schneewittchen, was one of these tales. In the earliest versions they recorded, the story was harsh and terrifying. The queen did not simply envy Snow White. She attempted murder multiple times, using corsets so tight they could suffocate, poison combs, and finally the fateful apple. The dwarfs were not charming companions. They were hard-working, isolated miners, small from years of underground labor, their lives defined by survival in darkness. The forest was not picturesque. It was threatening, a place where death could claim you without warning. When the Grimms first published the tale in 1812, it retained many of these harsh details. But as editions progressed, particularly the 1854 edition, they began softening the narrative. Death became less gruesome. Danger became less immediate. The dwarfs became endearing rather than symbolic of child labor. Even the queen's cruelty was reframed, softened, and partially excused by vanity alone. This editorial transformation raises unsettling questions. Were the changes simply to make the story palatable to children? Or was there more at play, a cultural shaping of memory that intentionally obscured the darker truths of the past? The women whose lives inspired Snow White had faced real envy, real danger, and real death. Yet in the polished Grimm tale, these threats were recast as fantasy. Even the queen's motives, once a complex blend of political ambition, jealousy, and survival, were rewritten into a simple obsession with beauty. And so the question lingers, is this merely cultural editing designed to comfort readers, or a deliberate cover-up of history, turning tragedy into fairy tale so generations could sleep safely at night? Because in the forests of Bavaria and the halls of Waldeck, the echoes of the original story still remain, waiting to be heard. The story of Snow White is filled with symbols that hide a far darker reality. Take the apple, bright, red, and tempting. In 16th century Europe, apples weren't just food, they were a vessel for poison. Arsenic and other toxins were easily concealed in fruit, slipped quietly into the meals of the powerful. A bite could kill or leave the victim lingering on the edge of life, exactly as Margaretha von Waldeck experienced in whispers of court rumors. Then there is the mirror, the object of obsession for the queen, the tool of judgment. Mirrors were not just reflections. They were reminders of social hierarchy, of beauty, and of control. Vanity could drive someone to jealousy, rage, and murder. It held a psychological grip strong enough to shape a story that would last centuries. And the forest, looming and dense, was more than just a setting for woodland adventures. For the young noblewomen who inspired the tale, it was a place of danger and refuge, a world between freedom and captivity. To disappear into the woods was to escape, but survival was never guaranteed. Every element of Snow White, apple mirror, forest, carries the weight of real fear, real power, and real danger. The magic was only a cover. Beneath it lies survival, politics, and the consequences of being desired, envied, or controlled. So ask yourself, what if this tale was never about magic at all, but about staying alive in a world designed to crush you? By the time the 20th century rolled around, Snow White had transformed from a whispered warning in the halls of Lohr Castle or the mining towns of Waldeck into a global story of innocence, magic, and whimsy. But the original Grimm Brothers tale, collected in Germany in the early 1800s, was far from innocent. It told of cruel stepmothers, relentless jealousy, strangulation attempts with tight corsets, poisoned combs, and the terrifying dance in red-hot iron shoes. Childhood fears were real. Death was tangible. Then in 1937, Walt Disney released Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, a film that would forever cement the story in popular culture. The dwarfs became cute, jovial, and endlessly endearing. A stark contrast to the grim, exhausted children who had toiled underground in the copper mines of Waldeck and Lohr, Maine. The forests no longer felt threatening. They became picturesque. Danger became stylized. Sinister villains softened into cartoonish evil. The poisoned apple still shone red, but its deadly symbolism was made playful. Disney's adaptation was revolutionary. It introduced color, music, and a fantasy world accessible to millions. The tale became a tale of hope, love, and triumph. Millions of children around the world learned Snow White as a story about kindness, friendship, and a prince's heroic rescue. The dark lessons of envy, political danger, and death were buried beneath layers of animation and song. Yet despite the charm, despite the happy ending, the original darkness never fully disappeared. The echoes remain. The dwarfs, once children struggling in deadly mines, were now companions. But the shadow of labor, isolation, and survival lingers if one knows the story's origin. The queen's obsession with her reflection hints at the psychological terror of vanity and control. And the forest, though rendered beautiful, was once a refuge and a trap, a place where a young woman could vanish and never return. Even Disney could not erase the past completely. The bones of tragedy, politics, and danger remain buried beneath every laugh, every song, every enchanted forest scene. So when you watch Snow White today, in the safety of your home in Los Angeles, or Munich, or Tokyo, remember, the story that sings of happy endings has shadows stretching back centuries. From the corridors of Lohr Castle to the dark copper mines of Waldeck, whispering secrets of fear, jealousy, and survival that no amount of animation can fully erase. And if the story still unsettles you, ask yourself, what truths lie hidden in the parts Disney could not or dared not touch? Even centuries after Margaretha von Waldeck walked the cobbled streets of Waldeck and Maria Sophia von Erthal gazed into her mirror in Lohr, Maine, their stories refused to stay buried. Scholars, folklorists, and historians continue to debate. Was Snow White ever a real person or merely a collection of fears, morals, and warnings woven into legend? Modern archaeological surveys of Waldeck have uncovered remnants of the copper mines where children labored in the 16th century. Narrow tunnels and crumbling wooden supports speak silently of lives spent underground, unseen and exploited, echoing the inspiration for the Seven Dwarfs. Visitors to the mines can almost imagine young figures scurrying through darkness, surviving day by day, small, resilient, and invisible to the world above. Meanwhile, in Lohr, Maine, the Lohr mirror still exists, preserved in a local museum. Its polished surface reflects more than faces. It reflects history. The wooden frame, the tiny cracks, and the acoustics hidden within make it easy to see how people once imagined a mirror that could speak, judge, and influence destinies. The mirror, once a novelty in 18th century Bavaria, became a symbol that tied reality to fairy tale, showing how real lives could be rewritten into legend. Tourists, historians, and enthusiasts wander these towns today, retracing steps that might have belonged to young noblewomen whose lives were constrained, observed, and ultimately erased by circumstance, power, or misfortune. Some say the forests surrounding Lohr and Waldeck still hum with echoes of those lives, echoes captured in tales whispered to children, carried from village to village, until the Grimm Brothers finally wrote them down. And the debates are far from settled. Is Snow White merely a myth, a sanitized lesson in morality? Or is she a composite of Margaretha, Maria Sophia, and countless other young women whose beauty, independence, or influence made them threats in the eyes of those in power? The answer may lie in one artifact, a relic preserved in a small Bavarian museum that once belonged to Maria Sophia, a mirror that could speak. It holds the faint traces of history, reflecting the truth that the story was never just a story. It was lived, it was feared, and it was remembered. And if you stare long enough into that mirror, some say you can almost see Snow White, not as a cartoon, not as a princess, but as a young woman whose life was stolen, whose story was told, and whose legacy refuses to die. Because the legend is still alive, and the mirror is still waiting to reveal what really happened. Snow White began as a fairy tale, full of magic and happy endings. But beneath the surface lies something far more haunting. From the copper mines of Waldeck, where children labored unseen, to the halls of Lohr Castle, where mirrors judged and stepmothers controlled, the story traces the lives of young women whose beauty and innocence made them targets of envy, fear, and power. Was Snow White Margaretha von Waldeck, Maria Sophia von Erthal, or simply a legend stitched from whispers of history? The truth remains hidden, and the mirror in Lohr, Maine still waits, holding secrets that no one has fully uncovered. If that mirror could talk, what would it tell you? If you're fascinated by dark origins, hidden truths, and stories history tried to erase, subscribe now, like, and share this video, because the deeper we go, the more unsettling the truth becomes. The legend of Snow White is far from over, and the shadows are only getting darker.